I'll ruin him, I whispered, my knuckles white around the crystal tumbler as I stood frozen outside Harrison Caldwell's mahogany-paneled office. Through the barely cracked door, I could hear my wife's voice trembling as she fought back tears, while that bastard laughed. 2 hours earlier, I'd been ready to call it a night, tired of the corporate small talk and fake smiles at Sarah's boss's extravagant house party. Now, I wasn't going anywhere, not after what I just heard. Let me back up. I'm Mike Donovan, Chief Structural Engineer at Apex Construction. I design buildings that don't fall down when the earth shakes. I solve concrete problems with concrete solutions. The corporate world my wife Sarah navigates as marketing director at Pinnacle Industries? That's a different kind of architecture altogether, built on quicksand and facades. You should come, Sarah had insisted 3 weeks earlier, her eyes bright with excitement. Harrison's summer parties are legendary, and he specifically asked if you'd be there. The same Harrison who made you redo the entire Q3 campaign because he didn't feel it after you had already presented it to the board? I asked, not bothering to hide my skepticism. Sarah sighed, placing her wine glass on our kitchen counter. That's business, Mike. Besides, I've been working on something big. Really big. I think he's finally going to announce my promotion to VP of Marketing. I knew how much she wanted this. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, missed anniversaries, and carrying her phone everywhere, even to bed, in case something urgent came up. Sarah deserved that promotion. And if attending some stuffy party would make her happy, I could survive one night of corporate politics. The night of the party, Harrison's lakeside mansion was exactly what I'd expected. Ostentatious. A modernist glass and steel structure that screamed, "Look how much money I have," rather than "Welcome to my home." The kind of place that made me mentally calculate load-bearing requirements and evacuation routes instead of admiring the architecture. This place would be a nightmare in a fire, I muttered, as we pulled into the circular driveway lined with luxury cars. All that glass would shatter from the heat differential, and those open staircases would act like chimneys. Sarah shot me a look. Can you be an engineer tomorrow? Tonight you're just my charming husband. Sorry, I said, leaning over to kiss her cheek. Consider my professional assessment mode deactivated. A valet opened Sarah's door, and she emerged looking stunning in her emerald cocktail dress. I watched as she straightened her shoulders, taking a deep breath before plastering on her professional smile. That small, vulnerable moment before she donned her corporate armor, it always made my heart ache a little. Sarah squeezed my hand as we walked in. Be nice, she whispered, straightening my tie. Harrison's bringing in the London team tonight. This is huge. I'm always nice, I said, stealing a quick kiss. It's not my fault if these corporate types can't handle honesty. She rolled her eyes but smiled. Just try not to redesign anyone's waves tonight, okay? Last time you told Janet from accounting that her new home addition would collapse in a strong wind. It would have. I probably saved her life. She should thank me. And did you have to draw the structural failure on a napkin? I was about to defend my impromptu napkin engineering when Harrison appeared, a perfectly tailored suit hanging from his tall frame, silver hair artfully styled to look carelessly tousled. The kind of man who spent more on haircuts than I did on my car payment. Sarah, there's my star, he boomed, air kissing both her cheeks before turning to me with a handshake that was too firm, too eager to establish dominance. And Mike, so glad you could make it. Sarah tells me you're building the new Westlake Tower? Designing it, I corrected. Actual construction starts next month. Fascinating, Harrison said, clearly not fascinated at all. Sarah, Lawrence from London is dying to hear about your new market penetration strategy. Mind if I steal her away, Mike? Before I could answer, Sarah was whisked into the crowd, throwing an apologetic glance over her shoulder. I headed for the bar. Bourbon neat, I told the bartender, a young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He nodded in silent solidarity. First time at one of Harrison's parties? Asked a woman beside me, swirling an olive in her martini. That obvious? You have that I'd rather chew glass look. Classic first-timer. She extended her hand. Eliza Chen. Legal. Mike Donovan, husband. She laughed. Ah, a fellow plus one. My wife's in finance. These things get easier when you develop a strategy. What's yours? Find the other miserable spouses, hide near the food, and make a game of counting how many times Harrison touches someone inappropriately. She nodded toward our host, who had his hand on the small of a young associate's back. That's 4 so far tonight. I felt a flash of concern. Does he do that to everyone? Only the ones he thinks can advance his career or make him look good. Eliza's expression darkened. Your wife is marketing, right? The one with the big London strategy? That's Sarah. Eliza gave me a knowing look. Watch out for her. Harrison's notorious for taking credit for women's work. My wife spent 6 months on a risk assessment framework, and guess whose name was on the presentation to the board? My grip tightened on my glass. And nobody calls him on it? Welcome to corporate politics, Mike. It's not about what you know. It's about who you know and how loudly you claim your victories. Or someone else's. 2 hours and several conversations about golf, which I don't play. Later, I was contemplating my escape. Sarah was still making the rounds, working the room like the professional she was. I texted her, going to get some air, back in a few. The back terrace offered a momentary reprieve from the noise and networking. I loosened my tie, gulping in the cool night air, and seriously considering calling an Uber. That's when I heard Ray's voices from around the corner of the house. You can't do this, Harrison. It's my work, my research, my strategy. Sarah's voice, tight with anger. Your work? On company time? Using company resources? Harrison's tone was patronizing, amused even. Don't be naive, Sarah. This is business. I moved closer, staying hidden behind a large potted plant. Through the window of what appeared to be Harrison's home office, I could see them, Sarah standing rigid, arms crossed, while Harrison lounged against his desk. I spent 6 months developing that strategy, Sarah said. Nights, weekends. And I appreciate your dedication, Harrison interrupted smoothly. But the London team doesn't need to know those details. The Nexus project needs a face, and as CEO, that face is mine. You're taking credit for everything? The micro-influencer network, the progressive engagement metrics, the entire digital transformation plan? I'm simplifying the narrative for our overseas partners. Your contribution will be noted in the internal documentation. My contribution? Sarah's laugh was bitter. It's my project, Harrison, my innovation. You didn't even understand the cross-platform analytics until I explained them to you yesterday. Harrison's smile vanished. Careful, Sarah. Pinnacle has been good to you. Very good. How's that mortgage on your charming little fixer-upper? The one I approved the special bonus for last year? I felt my blood pressure spike. That special bonus was compensation for the Asia-Pacific campaign that Sarah had salvaged after Harrison's nephew nearly tanked it. Are you threatening me? Sarah asked quietly. Threatening? God, no. Harrison's smile returned, shark-like. I'm reminding you how this works. You're good, Sarah, one of my best, but you're not irreplaceable. And if I go to the board? Harrison sighed, as if disappointed by her naivety. With what? Your word against mine? Please. Richard plays golf with me every Sunday. Martin's wife and mine are on the hospital charity committee together. Do you really think they'll side with you over me? The work speaks for itself. I have documentation, which was created on company laptops, stored on company servers, and developed with company data. Harrison stepped closer to her. Look, I get it. You want recognition. How about this? I announced the Nexus strategy as a pinnacle initiative, spearheaded by me, with your significant contribution noted. In 6 months, if London approves the funding, you get the VP title and a 15% raise. Sarah stared at him, and I could almost see the calculations running behind her eyes. 20%, and I lead the implementation team. 18, and you co-lead with Jeffrey. Jeffrey couldn't implement his way out of a paper bag. Harrison laughed. Probably not, but his father sits on the board. Politics, Sarah, that's the game. Fine, 18% and co-lead, but I want it in writing. Of course, we'll draw up the paperwork next week. Harrison placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder. This is how you advance, Sarah. Play the game. Be patient. Your time will come. He let his hand slide down her arm, lingering just a moment too long. Sarah stepped back, professional smile firmly in place. We should get back to the party, she said. In a minute. There's something else we need to discuss. Harrison moved to a cabinet, pulling out a bottle of scotch that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The London team has concerns about the demographic targeting. I told them you'd rework those sections. Rework? I spent weeks analyzing those demographics. The data is solid. The data may be solid, but the conclusions don't align with what London wants to hear. He poured 2 glasses, handing one to Sarah. They want to focus on the premium market. Your strategy emphasizes broader appeal. Because that's where the growth potential is. The premium market is saturated. If we pivot to the mid-tier with our new line, we could increase market share by 23% within 2 years. Perhaps, but London has shareholders to please, and shareholders like premium price points and premium margins. Harrison took a sip of his scotch. Just make the changes, Sarah. That's not asking too much, is it? Especially given our arrangement. The way he said arrangement made my skin crawl. Sarah's voice turned ice cold. I'll review the demographics. Good, Harrison smiled. And one more thing, the board dinner next Thursday, I'd like you to attend. Wear that blue dress from the Christmas party, the one with the slit up the side. I'd heard enough. I stepped away from the window, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to burst into that office and confront Harrison, but that wouldn't help Sarah. If anything, it would make her situation worse. No, this required strategy. This required patience. This required the kind of structural analysis I applied to buildings. Find the weak points. Apply pressure. Watch it all come tumbling down. I returned to the party, scanning the room until I spotted Eliza from legal, still stationed near the food table. You look like you've seen a ghost, she commented as I approached. I just overheard Harrison telling my wife he's taking credit for her entire Nexus project strategy, I said quietly. Eliza didn't look surprised. Classic Harrison. Let me guess, he offered her some token recognition and a vague promise of future advancement. How did you know? Because he's done it at least 5 times that I know of. She pulled me further away from the crowd. Listen, if Sarah wants to fight this, I might be able to help. Not officially, of course. I like my job, but I know where some bodies are buried. What do you mean? Harrison's been playing this game for years. My department has handled several quiet settlements with former employees. NDAs all around, of course. But patterns exist. If Sarah has documentation, she let the implication hang. She does, I confirmed. Smart woman. Tell her to call me. Eliza slipped me her card. And Mike, be careful. Harrison has powerful friends. I rejoined the party, plastering on a fake smile as I located Sarah among a group of executives. Her professional mask was firmly in place, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tightness around her eyes. There you are, she said brightly when she saw me. I was just telling David about our trip to Barcelona last year. I played along, sharing sanitized anecdotes about Gaudi's architecture, while my mind worked on a different kind of construction, the systematic dismantling of Harrison Caldwell's career. The drive home was quiet. I waited until we were in our bedroom, doors closed, before speaking. I heard you and Harrison talking in his office. Sarah froze in the middle of removing her earrings. You were eavesdropping? I was getting some air on the terrace and happened to overhear. He's stealing your work, Sarah. She sighed, sitting heavily on the edge of our bed. It's complicated. It's theft. And the way he talked to you, telling you what to wear, that's sexual harassment. Welcome to corporate America, Sarah said bitterly. You think this is the first time this has happened? At least Harrison is offering me something in return. My first boss took credit for my campaigns and gave me nothing but a good time in my annual review. I sat beside her, taking her hand. This isn't right. We should fight this. How? Harrison wasn't wrong about the board. They're all old friends. It would be my word against his, and guess who they'll believe? The man who's made them millions for the past decade, or the woman who's been there 3 years. There has to be evidence. Documentation of your work, emails, something. Sarah looked at me for a long moment, then squeezed my hand. I appreciate the righteous anger, Mike. I really do, but this is my career, my fight. I've accepted Harrison's terms for now because it's the smart play. VP in 6 months with an 18% raise? That's not nothing. And if he doesn't follow through, then I'll reevaluate. She stood up, unzipping her dress. Now, can we please stop talking about Harrison? I've spent enough of my evening thinking about him. I let it drop, but I didn't let it go. The next morning, while Sarah was in the shower, I checked her work laptop. She hadn't logged out of her email, a careless mistake she rarely made, a testament to how rattled she'd been the night before. What I found made my blood boil. Months of emails between Sarah and her team, developing the Nexus strategy from concept to completion. Presentations with her name in the document properties, edited dozens of times. And more recently, versions where Harrison's name replaced hers as the primary author. But the smoking gun was an email from Harrison to the IT department. Please update access permissions for the Nexus project files. Restrict Sarah Donovan's editing privileges to comment only for the executive summary and strategy overview sections. She doesn't need to make changes to those areas anymore. Dated 3 days ago, right after Sarah had presented the completed strategy to him. I wasn't just angry now, I was coldly, methodically furious. The kind of fury that doesn't explode. It calculates. Find anything interesting? Sarah's voice from the doorway made me jump. You knew I'd look, I said, not bothering to deny it. I know you. She came to stand behind me, hair damp from the shower. That's why I left it open. I wanted you to see what I'm dealing with. This is worse than I thought. He's systematically erasing your contribution. Yes. And you're just going to accept that? Sarah leaned over my shoulder, clicking through to another folder labeled Insurance. Inside were copies of every draft, every email, every piece of research she'd done for the Nexus project, all securely backed up to her personal cloud storage. I'm not naive, Mike. I've been documenting everything from day one. I just haven't decided what to do with it yet. I turned to look at her, this woman who continued to amaze me even after 7 years of marriage. I have some ideas about that. I pulled out Eliza Chen's business card. I met someone from legal last night who implied Harrison has a history of this behavior. She said she might be able to help. Sarah examined the card, her expression cautious. Eliza Chen? I know her. She's sharp. But going to legal is risky, Mike. If Harrison finds out, we don't have to decide anything today, I assured her, but it's good to know we have options. For the next week, Sarah and I developed our own strategy. She continued to play the game at work, making the demographic changes Harrison wanted while quietly documenting every alteration. I reached out to an old college friend who now specialized in employment law. Based on what you've told me, she has a solid case for intellectual property theft and possibly sexual harassment, Alicia said over coffee. But corporate cases are messy, expensive, and can follow you for years. Even if she wins, she might become unhireable in certain circles. So what would you recommend? I asked. Ideally, find leverage that doesn't involve the courts, something that would make Harrison and the company want to make this right without a public fight. Leverage. That was something I understood. In engineering, leverage is all about finding the right point to apply force to move something much larger than yourself. Sarah met with Eliza for lunch, returning with valuable intelligence. Harrison's done this before, multiple times. The company has settled at least 3 cases that Eliza knows of. All women, all similar patterns. That's good for our case, right? Yes and no. It proves a pattern, but it also shows the company is willing to pay to keep things quiet. They've got the playbook down. Sarah paced our kitchen. But Eliza mentioned something interesting. Apparently, Victoria Hargrove, the CEO of our London partner, is known for having zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. She pushed out her own brother-in-law when he was caught taking credit for a female colleague's work. So if Victoria knew what Harrison was doing, exactly. But we'd need irrefutable proof delivered in a way that Harrison couldn't intercept or explain away. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The following Friday, Sarah came home with news. The London team is flying in on Monday. Harrison's called an all-hands meeting to unveil the Nexus strategy. He wants me to support him during the presentation. Support how? Stand there right and look pretty while he presents my work. She kicked off her heels angrily. And guess what? Jeffrey is suddenly a key contributor to the project. The same Jeffrey who asked me last month if TikTok was still a thing. Board member's son Jeffrey? The very same. I considered this development. Who else will be at this meeting? Everyone, London executives, our entire marketing department, the board, even some industry press. Harrison's making a big show of it. A plan began to form in my mind. Does Harrison use presentation notes, note cards, teleprompter, anything like that? Sarah frowned. He likes to act like he's speaking off the cuff, but he always has the presentation loaded on his tablet. He glances at it throughout. Why? Just curious, I said innocently. And who controls the main presentation display? It sets it up, but Harrison advances the slides himself using a remote. Again, why? I smiled. I think I might have an idea. Sarah looked skeptical. Mike, whatever you're thinking, be careful. This is my career on the line. Trust me, I said, already mentally reaching out to another old friend, Jordan Kim, IT security expert extraordinaire, who owed me a favor after I'd helped design his dream house last year. This will work. The weekend passed in a flurry of preparation. By Sunday night, we were ready. Jordan had provided an elegant little solution, a custom app disguised as a system update that would allow remote access to Harrison's presentation tablet. Not to change anything, just to glitch at the right moment. When Jordan came over Saturday night to walk us through the plan, he brought a burner phone that would act as the trigger device. I've created what's essentially a remote backdoor into Harrison's presentation system, he explained, showing us the specially designed app. It piggybacks on the corporate Wi-Fi, using a vulnerability in their network that IT hasn't patched yet. Is this legal? Sarah asked nervously. Jordan grinned. Let's call it a gray area. We're not stealing data or damaging systems, just temporarily accessing a presentation file that's already on the network. Think of it as an unscheduled QA test. What exactly will happen? I asked. When you press this button, Jordan pointed to the app's interface, it'll trigger a sequence. First, the presentation will jump to a slide of my choosing, in this case, the document properties showing Sarah as the original author. Then, after 30 seconds, the system will freeze completely. Just long enough for someone to need to step in with a backup. That's where I come in, Sarah said, holding up her phone, with my complete original presentation. Exactly, Jordan looked impressed. You two make a good team. Are you sure this won't be traced back to us? I asked. Positive. The app leaves no footprint, and the burner phone will be wiped and disposed of afterward. Besides, Harrison's not exactly popular with the IT department. Trust me, they won't investigate too hard when his presentation fails. Meanwhile, Sarah had prepared what she called her nuclear option, a presentation of her own, hidden on her phone, ready to be deployed if necessary. She'd also reached out discreetly to a few trusted team members, sharing her concerns without revealing our plans. Rebecca from Data Analytics has been compiling timestamps of all my work on the project, Sarah explained. And Michael from Design confirmed he has all the original mock-ups with my change requests, not Harrison's. You've built quite the resistance movement, I said, impressed. I learned from the best. She kissed me. You've been fighting for me since day one. It's time I fought for myself. Sunday night, Sarah could barely sleep. I found her at 3 a.m. in our home office, reviewing her presentation for the 100th time. What if this backfires, she whispered. What if I look like a fool in front of everyone? I knelt beside her chair. Then we deal with it together, but Sarah, I've seen you present. You know this material inside and out because you created it. Harrison's just reciting lines. You're the playwright. She took a deep breath. You're right, let's do this. Monday morning, Sarah dressed with particular care, choosing a sharp charcoal suit rather than the blue dress Harrison had suggested. Power dressing at its finest. Nervous? I asked as she applied her lipstick. Red, another deliberate choice. Terrified, she admitted, but also ready. Whatever happens today, at least I'll know I didn't just roll over and take it. I kissed her, careful not to smudge her makeup. You're going to be amazing. Call me the second it's over. I will. She grabbed her portfolio and headed for the door, then paused. Mike, thank you for believing in me, for being willing to fight with me, not for me. Always, I promised. After she left, I called Jordan to confirm everything was set, then tried to distract myself with work. It was impossible. By 10 a.m., I gave up and drove to Pinnacle Industries, parking across the street. I wasn't planning to go in, this was Sarah's moment, but I wanted to be nearby, just in case. At exactly 11 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. It's happening. Wish me luck. I replied with a heart emoji, then settled in to wait. The minutes dragged by like hours. At 11:15, I pulled out the burner phone, staring at the trigger app. Would this work, or was I about to blow up my wife's career? At 11:28, another text from Sarah. He's starting, about to get to the strategy overview. I took a deep breath and pressed the button. For 2 agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Had the app failed? Then my phone buzzed with a flurry of texts. It worked. Tablet glitched exactly as planned. Document properties showed my name. Harrison freaking out. I'm stepping in with my presentation. Call you soon. 30 excruciating minutes later, my phone rang. Sarah's face appeared on the screen. Well, I answered immediately. Get in here, she said, her voice breathless with excitement. Right now, main conference room, you have to see this. 5 minutes later, I was being escorted through Pinnacle's sleek lobby. The receptionist didn't even ask for ID when I mentioned Sarah's name. Everyone seemed too distracted by whatever was happening upstairs. I found the main conference room in chaos. Executives in expensive suits huddled in corners, whispering urgently. IT staff hovered around the presentation system, and in the center of it all stood Sarah, engaged in intense conversation with an elegant older woman I didn't recognize. Mike! Sarah waved me over, her eye bright with a mix of shock and triumph. This is Victoria Hargrove, CEO of Hargrove International, our London partner. I shook the woman's hand, trying to catch up. Pleasure to meet you. Your wife is quite remarkable, Mr. Donovan, Victoria said in a crisp British accent. It's not often a presentation goes so spectacularly off script. Sarah squeezed my arm. It worked, Mike. It actually worked. What happened to Harrison? I asked, noticing his absence. Currently meeting with the board, Victoria replied, a hint of steel beneath her polite tone. I believe they have quite a lot to discuss. As Victoria was called away by another executive, Sarah pulled me to a quiet corner. It was perfect, she whispered excitedly. Harrison started his presentation, all confident and smug. He was about 5 minutes in, just getting to the good parts, my parts, when suddenly his tablet glitched. Glitched? The presentation jumped ahead several slides to one that wasn't supposed to be there. A slide showing the document properties of the Nexus strategy, with my name as author and Harrison's as last modified by. He tried to go back, but the remote stopped responding. I smiled. Jordan had come through beautifully. Harrison started fumbling, trying to explain it away as a technical error, but then his tablet completely froze. And that's when I stepped in. Of course you did. I offered to help, suggesting we use my backup copy while it fixed the issue. Harrison couldn't say no without looking incompetent in front of everyone. So I connected my phone to the display and brought up my presentation, the complete one, with all my original research and conclusions, not the watered-down version Harrison wanted. And the London team? Victoria was skeptical at first, but when I got to the micro-influencer network strategy, the part Harrison didn't even understand, she started asking questions. Detailed questions that Harrison couldn't answer, but I could. It became obvious who had actually developed the strategy. Sarah's eyes sparkled as she continued. Then came the moment I hadn't planned for. Rebecca from my team, you remember the data analyst who's always so quiet? She suddenly spoke up, said she had all the original research models on her laptop that would support my conclusions. Harrison tried to shut her down, but Victoria asked to see them. Rebecca had your back? Not just Rebecca. When Harrison started making excuses, 3 other team members jumped in with specific examples of how I developed each component of the strategy. Turns out I wasn't the only one keeping receipts. Sarah lowered her voice. And get this, Diane from HR was there taking notes. Apparently, Harrison's management style has been a concern for a while. So it wasn't just your rebellion, it was a full-on coup, I said, impressed. It gets better, Jeffrey. Yes, board member's son, Jeffrey, actually stood up and admitted he had nothing to do with the project. Said Harrison had only added his name last week and told him to just nod along. Apparently, Jeffrey has been trying to get out from under his father's shadow, and this was the last straw. That explained the swift response. Harrison hadn't just made one enemy, he'd created an army of them, all waiting for the right moment. Victoria called a break and took Harrison and me into a side room. Sarah continued. She told him she wanted to speak with the actual architect of this strategy and asked him to excuse us. The look on his face, Mike, it was like watching someone implode in slow motion. After that, Victoria and I talked for almost an hour. She loved the original demographic targeting that Harrison made me change, said it aligned perfectly with their 5-year expansion plan. So what happens now? Victoria's recommended to our board that I lead the Nexus project implementation, not lead. She also suggested they review Harrison's position given his management style. As if on cue, the conference room doors opened and Harrison emerged from what was clearly a brutal meeting with the board. His face was ashen, his usual confidence shattered. He looked around the room, his eyes landing on Sarah and me. For a moment, I thought he might come over, to threaten, to beg, I wasn't sure. Instead, he strode toward us, an unexpected fire in his eyes. "You engineered this," he hissed at me, his voice low enough that others couldn't hear. "You think you're clever with your little tech trick? This isn't over." I stepped slightly in front of Sarah, instinctively protective. "Actually, Harrison, I think it is over. The only thing I engineered was the Westlake Tower. Sarah engineered your downfall all by herself." "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he snarled. Sarah moved beside me, shoulder to shoulder. "No, Harrison, you had no idea who you were dealing with. That was your mistake." Before he could respond, one of the board members called his name sharply from across the room. Harrison's face twitched, a muscle jumping in his jaw. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. "Mr. and Mrs. Donovan?" A board member I recognized from Sarah's company photos approached us. "Sarah, the board would like to speak with you, alone, if you don't mind." Sarah squeezed my hand, a mixture of hope and anxiety crossing her face. "I'll be right back." While she was gone, I texted Jordan. "Mission accomplished. I owe you big time." His reply came seconds later. "Just doing my civic duty. Corporate douchebags must be held accountable. Beer next weekend? Absolutely." I paced the conference room, watching the remaining executives whisper among themselves. One younger manager caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up. Word was spreading fast. Eliza from legal appeared at my elbow. "Quite the show," she murmured. I counted at least 3 potential lawsuits Harrison opened himself up to in just the last hour. "Is that good or bad for the company?" "Depends on how they handle it." She nodded toward the boardroom. "If they're smart, they'll cut him loose with a severance package that includes an ironclad ending. If they're very smart, they'll promote your wife and implement actual policies to prevent this from happening again. And if they're not smart," Eliza shrugged, "then I'll be very busy and they'll be very poor. Either way, I win." 20 minutes later, Sarah emerged from the boardroom, her expression unreadable. She walked straight to me, took my hand, and led me toward the elevator. "Well," I asked when the doors closed, leaving us alone. A slow smile spread across her face. "Effective immediately, Harrison is taking an indefinite leave of absence. I've been named Interim Vice President of Marketing, with a formal review in 3 months for the permanent position." I whooped, lifting her off her feet in a hug that probably wrinkled her immaculate suit. "Sarah, that's amazing." "There's more," she said when I set her down. "They're launching an internal investigation into Harrison's management practices. Apparently, I'm not the only one with stories to tell. The board is concerned about potential lawsuits." "They should be." The elevator reached the lobby and we stepped out, heading toward the parking lot. "I still can't believe it worked," Sarah said, the enormity of the day's events finally hitting her. "We took down Harrison Caldwell." "You took down Harrison Caldwell," I corrected. "I just provided a little technical support." Team effort, she insisted, squeezing my hand. I couldn't have done it without you. As we reached our cars, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. She checked it and laughed. What? I asked. It's from Melissa in HR. Harrison just tried to access his office and found his keycard deactivated. Apparently, he made quite a scene. Started throwing things and security had to escort him out. She says he was shouting about incompetent IT systems and ungrateful employees. Classic Harrison, blaming everyone but himself. Karma's a beautiful thing. Sarah looked up at me, her expression turning serious. Thank you for not letting me settle, for pushing me to fight back. Always, I said, pulling her close. Though I have to say, if this is what happens when I leave parties early, I'm never staying until the end again. She laughed, bright and free in a way I hadn't heard in months. Let's go home and celebrate properly. Lead the way, Madam Vice President. As we drove home separately, Sarah insisted on bringing her car back rather than leaving it in the corporate lot. Never leave evidence behind, she joked. I thought about how close she had come to accepting Harrison's theft as just how the game is played. How many others had made that same calculation and decided that speaking up wasn't worth the risk? The fallout was swift and far-reaching. Within a week, Harrison had officially resigned to pursue other opportunities. Two other executives closely aligned with him suddenly announced early retirements. The board had implemented a new anonymous reporting system for workplace misconduct, spearheaded by none other than Eliza Chen, who was promoted to senior legal counsel. Our celebration dinner that night turned into an impromptu strategy session. Sarah spent hours at our dining room table, surrounded by notes and her laptop, completely redesigning the implementation plan for the Nexus project. You know, I said, refilling her wine glass, you could take a night off. You've earned it. She looked up, her eyes bright with something I hadn't seen in years. Pure, unbridled excitement about her work. I can't. For the first time, I'm building something that's truly mine. Something with my name on it. Do you have any idea how that feels? I did. Every building I designed carried my stamp, my vision. Sarah had been denied that basic professional satisfaction for years. Besides, she continued, Victoria wants the revised plan by Friday, and there's still so much to do. The original demographic targeting needs to be restored. The influencer network needs expanding. And okay, I laughed, raising my hands in surrender. Just remember to eat something. That's why I keep you around, she said, grabbing a piece of the pizza I'd ordered. Structural support and regular feeding. 6 months later, I ran into Harrison at a downtown coffee shop. He looked different. Cheaper suit, cheaper haircut, the confident swagger replaced by a weary slouch. He spotted me at the same moment I saw him, and for a second I thought he might confront me. Instead, he quickly averted his gaze, grabbed his coffee, and hurried out. I later learned he'd taken a mid-level position at a smaller competitor, where his reputation had preceded him. No corner office, no executive assistant, no power to steal others' work. Just a desk in a row of identical desks with a boss who watched him like a hawk. The most surprising development came 2 weeks after the presentation. Sarah received an unexpected visitor in her new corner office, Jeffrey, the board member's son. He apologized, Sarah told me that evening, said he'd been pressured by his father and Harrison to participate in these kinds of schemes before, and he was tired of it. He's asked to be assigned to my team as a junior associate to learn how it's actually done. Are you going to take him? I'm considering it. Everyone deserves a chance to redefine themselves. She smiled. Plus, having a board member's son as an ally could be useful. A month later, Sarah's team celebrated her official appointment as Vice President of Marketing, 3 months ahead of the original timeline. Over champagne and canapes, Rebecca, the quiet data analyst, pulled me aside. You know, we've all wanted to stand up to Harrison for years, she confided. He's taken credit for everyone's work, not just Sarah's. But nobody had the evidence or the courage to do anything about it. Sarah had both, I said proudly, watching my wife across the room, confidently discussing strategy with Victoria and 2 board members. And she had you, Rebecca added. Sometimes that's what we all need, someone who believes us enough to help us believe in ourselves. The ripple effects extended beyond Pinnacle Industries. 2 months after Harrison's departure, Sarah was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference about intellectual property rights in the workplace. She didn't mention Harrison by name, but her message was clear. Document everything, build allies, and never accept theft as just how the game is played. Her session had the highest attendance of the conference. A year later, when the Nexus project exceeded all projections, Victoria offered Sarah a position heading up the North American division of Hargrove International, a significant step up in both responsibility and compensation. After much discussion, Sarah accepted. "Are you sure about this?" I asked as we celebrated the offer. "You've built something special at Pinnacle." "I'm sure," she said confidently. "Pinnacle was where I learned to fight. Hargrove is where I'll learn to lead." On her last day at Pinnacle, Sarah's team presented her with a framed copy of the original Nexus strategy document, complete with the metadata showing her as the author. "So you never forget who really built this," Rebecca said during the farewell party. The frame now hangs in Sarah's new office, a reminder of battles won and lessons learned. Harrison's downfall wouldn't change corporate America overnight. There would be other Harrisons, other stolen ideas, other impossible choices. But today, at least, the right person had won. The building had held its ground against the earthquake. And if another tremor came along, well, I happened to be married to a woman who now knew exactly how to shore up the foundations. That night, as we celebrated with champagne on our back porch, Sarah's phone kept buzzing with congratulatory messages from colleagues. News traveled fast. The last text came from Jordan. "Check Harrison's LinkedIn profile. You're welcome." We looked it up immediately. Harrison had updated his status, exploring new opportunities after 12 successful years at Pinnacle Industries. "Exploring new opportunities," Sarah read aloud, laughing. "That's corporate speak for fired in disgrace." "I hope his next opportunity involves a significant pay cut in an office without a window," I said, refilling our glasses. "I'll drink to that." Sarah clinked her glass against mine. "To new opportunities. Mine, not his." As the summer evening settled around us, I studied my wife's face, alight with vindication and possibility. In engineering, we have a concept called structural integrity, the ability of a structure to withstand its intended load without failing. Today, Sarah hadn't just maintained her integrity, she'd proven just how much weight she could bear. And Harrison? Well, he'd learned the hard way that some structures aren't designed to break, no matter how much pressure you apply. Some only grow stronger.